That was amazing. Let's do it again. Here we go. This is episode 4 to the Unfake It Till You Make It podcast. I'm your host, Tony Soriano. Marker.
This podcast will talk you through the ups and downs in the entertainment industry.
Each and every one of you has a talent, but it's a tough business. People gonna tell you, get a real job.
By introducing you to sustainable, moldable methods in a crazy, cutthroat world.
Let us harness our willpower and take real action.
Don't let it get you down.
Join me, brothers and sisters, on a journey through trials and tribulations.
Unfake it till you make it.
Hello and welcome, my entertainment industry friends and enthusiasts. First off, I wanted to thank you for tuning in. This is episode 4 of this new podcast, and working hard to get everything going smoothly and lining up guests and cutting all the audio. If you find this episode to be to your liking, please don't forget to subscribe, review, comment. Let me know how it's doing, what you're thinking. I would really love to hear from you. In this episode, I interview a mindful man with multiple businesses in a magical world of cinema. If you love cameras, film sets, and tech talk as much as I do, you'll enjoy this episode. We get into all of that and much more. He is a phenomenal director of photography in the feature film and commercial world. We discuss how breaking his leg in 5 places was a good thing, and why actively taking a pause throughout the day can save you a lot of trouble. Please enjoy a rewarding conversation with one of my dear friends and colleagues, who is also one of my much appreciated mentors, Mr. Sacha Riviére. Okay, we are rolling. I'm going to take a sip of my tea.
Yeah, welcome.
Yeah, thank you for this tea. Sacha Riviére. We are at your place, and it's beautiful here.
Thanks.
Okay, I'm going to first thank you for doing this interview with me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited. And in a few sentences, can you just tell me your whole life? But can you mention a little bit who you are and what you do?
Sure. My name's Sacha, and I'm a cameraman and photographer, and I work in the motion picture industry. Father of 4 kids.
Yeah.
And husband.
Multiple business owner.
Owner, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Great. I have a lot of questions about all that. Can you first start out, if you remember, you told me this story, and I remember laughing the hell out of all this, about this time on set when you and your friend, you actually got kicked off because you couldn't stop laughing. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
So can you just start and tell me about that?
Well, I was working as a first AC, and this was probably, like maybe 15, 20 years ago. And
a first AC is an assistant cameraman.
Yeah, first assistant cameraman. And I was working on a feature film for a cameraman that I was really good friends with. His name was Robert Bennett. And we were working nights and long hours, and this was probably a few weeks into the feature, so everybody's tired, and this was probably hour 14 or 15, and we're doing this really kind of intimate scene between the 2 leads, and the 2 leads are actually cross-dressing, and it's both the actors were kind of sensitive, and the director was trying to be sensitive and trying to set the tone to make them feel comfortable and to allow them to do their craft. And me and my second AC, we were sitting on a sofa kind of watching the rehearsal, and the cameraman was also watching the rehearsal, and we were kind of seeing him, and he had this wallet in his back pocket with this long chain hanging out, and I don't know, it seems kind of silly now, but at the time we were making fun of this long chain that he had attached to his wallet, and then we said, yeah, he'd probably take that out and beat you with it. And we just could not stop laughing. And it happened to be at this moment where it was not the time to be laughing. You know, the director was rehearsing with his talent, and then the talent thought that we were laughing at them, and then we had to step off set, and then the director was like, "No, you need to, take a few minutes and get out of here."
So you took a few minutes, but then you still couldn't stop laughing, or what?
It was just like this fit of laughter that we just couldn't stop, and I came back, like it was a good 15-20 minutes before I could come back.
Oh my gosh.
And you're tired, and just something sets you off. And then I came back and I apologized to the director and apologized to the talent too. I don't know if they really believed that, because they were in a very vulnerable position, and so they probably thought, even though they probably thought it was about them, but it wasn't. It had nothing to do with them, and it was just something stupid. But it's the dynamics, and things happen, and it's okay. Nothing's that serious. So,
but did you stay on set after that, or did they seriously? Did you get hired again? What happened?
Oh yeah, no, I finished the film.
Okay.
We all got along, but gave him a little extra space for a few hours, and we did get it done. So
wow. Yeah. I've definitely been in multiple situations where I can't control my laughter in the wrong times. But I love those moments. Like the feeling, looking back, is really fun. We should all laugh more.
Yeah, there's times where I've been on set and things are so serious and everybody's so serious, and I kind of can step back and be like, wait a minute, what if somebody just jumped out in front of camera and did something really silly, and just kind of took it to didn't take it so seriously.
It's what are we doing here? We're playing.
Yeah.
We're fucking playing.
Exactly.
As kids that have adult abilities.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes people forget that on set. And that's a good reminder. Because we do take that serious. I mean, it is a profession.
Yeah, and then, there's time and place for everything, but...
You mentioned once to me, you said when you were growing up, you swore you would never join the film industry. So what was your mindset then, and what changed?
Yeah, that's interesting. So I'm actually fourth generation film. So my mother was production secretary for Coppola. My grandmother was
Francis Ford Coppola,
the
famous
Coppola.
director of Godfathers and many other.
Yeah.
Wow.
And my mother worked on Apocalypse Now and a couple other interesting films. And my grandmother was a negative cutter for Technicolor and various labs throughout Hollywood for 25, 30 years.
Wow.
And then before that was her mother was a seamstress, costume person, and she worked on a handful of movies, and one of them was My Fair Lady, and she made the famous dress on My Fair Lady. So
really,
yeah,
that's great.
Kind of cool.
I gotta watch that.
And growing up, I was around film industry people, and my mother working on films, and my impression was there was a lot of fake people, and it was just this lack of genuine, and it wasn't something that really attracted me, and so I was around it a lot, and then and I swore that I don't ever want to work in this industry, and maybe I didn't have the tools, but maybe in hindsight now, maybe what I really wanted was to not be around fake people, dishonest, or just I wanted to be around authentic people.
So what changed then? Why did you join, and how did that happen?
So it was more just happened to find work when I needed work, and it was available, and it was easy. And I worked as a PA, and
That's a production assistant for those.
I worked
of you
as
who don't know.
a production assistant, or gopher, it was also called at the time. And I drove around a lot and did pickups and worked on set, some TV shows, a couple features, but I'd always had like an interest in photography, and my father was a photographer, and I went to school for photography, and so I always leaned towards the visual arts, and when I was working in the film industry, it scratched the itch for a minute just to have some work, but I wasn't really interested in doing it for very long, and I asked that if I were to work as a PA, can I work in camera department? Because I'd rather be working as a PA in something that I'm kind of interested in than anything else.
Aimlessly, yeah.
So, and these producers obliged, and they let me work on some films as a PA in camera department, and then kind of just trying to work my way and learn more about the business and learn more about the equipment, and then I started to look at learning more about the equipment. I got a job at Panavision, and there I really got to learn the equipment in depth.
So from that moment on, you didn't get side jobs? Like you weren't a pizza boy in between that, or
I was. Actually, I was a pizza boy.
No, you weren't.
Yes, I was. I did. I was a pizza delivery
driver
for Quickies Pizza, and I remember actually my first job was at a liquor store.
Really?
I was a box boy at a liquor store, and I restocked and cleaned up, and that was probably about 16, and then about 17 to 18, I did delivery, and then 18, I was working on set. 19, I was working on set. By the time I was 20, I got a job at Panavision.
Oh, okay. Nice. So you went into being a first AC, and you held it throughout like a lot of feature films, worked with a lot of film legends. And when you transitioned from production assistant to first AC, what were your methods for keeping the gigs consistent, and how did you network? And for those of us that have no idea, how does that work?
So when I went from working freelance, which was totally foreign to me, I'd never worked freelance before, and then got a job at Panavision, which was a steady 9-to-5 job, and then learned about the equipment, and then got to meet different clients coming in. In that process of meeting the clients, I started to build a relationship with different first ACs that were coming in and second ACs, and then on the weekends, I might be asked to like work as a second AC on a music video, or I would take any opportunity to work freelance in addition to working at Panavision, and with the intent of getting more experience, building the relationship base. I mean, really, it's about relationships.
I say.
So less about networking and more about relationships. And when I worked at Panavision, I started working as a second AC. And then when I left Panavision, I was second ACing a little bit and wasn't quite as good of a second AC as I was a first AC. I actually had a natural knack for pulling focus. And pulling focus is where you set the lens to keep the subject that you want in focus. So if the actor's at 10 feet, you place the lens at 10 feet. If he walks to 4 feet away from the camera, you follow him to 4 feet and keep him in focus the whole way. It sounds easy, but it actually is kind of difficult.
That's a technical job, but it's creative too, I think.
It is. It's also underappreciated.
Yes.
And didn't really fill my cup, so to speak. So, I did that for a number of years, probably longer than I should have. And but it's gave me a lot of experience. Got to work with a lot of people, and got to learn a lot about the technical aspects of cinematography and photography.
I remember being on set. It was a Kaspersky commercial, and I was a PA, but I noticed the first AC had no second, so I just told him, "Hey, I've done second work and from working with you," and I was still new, but he said, "Oh my God, yeah, I'll pull you in. I'll tell the AD. I would love that." So I was working with him all day, and that was the day I was like, "Oh my God, being a first is so important." And I saw him pulling focus, like. He was really good, but he was like sweating beads and dripping, and no one else was sweating. And it's like if he messes up that focus, they have to reshoot, like, or do a retake or whatever. And people, you're right, it's underappreciated.
And when we were shooting on film, you didn't see the results right away. So it was even a little more challenging because you had to just have this inner sense of if I got it or not. And
that's crazy.
So you have a camera operator looking through the lens, and he's on a film camera. He's looking at an image that's going through the lens, bouncing off a mirror, then going through a ground glass, and then through a optical viewfinder. So really, the operator is only seeing like half of the light that travels to the film. So he doesn't even get the full image to evaluate the image, but while you're rolling, and then. The first AC is standing next to the camera, not looking through the camera, and he's looking at the subject that he wants to keep in focus, and looking at the lens and a follow focus, which is a device to just adjust the focus, or a remote follow focus, which is the most common one used today, and so you're evaluating where the actor or subject is in relationship to the camera. And we used to get marks all the time, and first ACs still get marks, but nowadays the role has shifted because shooting digitally, you see instantly the results of the focus. Before, you had to wait till the film was processed and telecine, and then you'd see, okay, did you really get it?
Would that be at the end of the day, like a daily? Or
no, it would be more than 24 hours later.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's incredible.
So a lot of times the first AC would say, okay, yeah, I feel good about that one. I got it. Or he might say, no, you know what? I feel like I need another one. So he'd tell the first AD and the cameraman, hey, I need another take because I don't think I got that one. So at the very minimum, they would do another one and then maybe a safety so that there's just a second backup so that
that's crazy.
The director has choices to choose from. But now, with digital, not only are you seeing the entire image live instantly, you can play it back and double check and really see it pixel for pixel. Did we get that? And the first ACs are no longer next to the camera so much. They're more in front of a monitor and a remote follow focus and under a little tent and they're pulling focus off the monitor and getting less marks, which are just like measurements from the actor to the camera, getting less marks and just kind of pulling focus by eye. So
it seems like, today there's still blocking, which is how you move the camera, how you move the actors, and so you kind of rehearse that and then you shoot it. It almost seems like there can be less blocking and more precise focus with today's technology and all that, right?
Well, blocking is really important because, there's so many jobs on a film set that, everybody's trying the best they can to do the best job they can, and they all want to make their craft look great, and which is great. That's a good intention. And so when a production or, say, a director and DP are just kind of like not rehearsing and not blocking and just kind of winging it, it's challenging for all the crew members because they don't know what's going to happen, and whether you're a first AC or a costume person or a set designer, what are you going to see? And so a lot of times when you're winging it, whether you rolled or not, and it becomes a rehearsal anyways, because the first take, sometimes, and at the same time, sometimes you get this magic, spontaneous moment that you don't capture if you rehearse it too many times. So it really depends on like what you're trying to communicate. Like, is the director trying to capture spontaneity, or is there a vision that can really be nailed
perfectly
down?
Yeah. A lot of preparation, and preparation is so key, right? So there's a lot of gut feelings also as a first AC. You have to go with your gut and say, I got it, just like with cameraman, just like with directing. And I think it's weird. How do you get to that point where you trust your gut? Do you have a answer for that?
I think, well, for me, it was kind of natural. It's hand-eye coordination for first AC, for focus, and knowing whether you got it or not. And the more you do it, the more experience you get with it. So I think with hand-eye coordination, if that was a natural thing for me. Wasn't really an issue, but there's a lot of pressure on set too, and how do you speak up when everybody is happy with a take and you're the only one that's like, I didn't really feel good about that. Am I going to be the bearer of bad news right now? But you know what? Yeah, you have to.
Yeah, if you want to do your job right.
Yeah, and sometimes there's mistakes that happen on set, and you got to let people know as soon as possible, so that if they want to redo it, they can redo it. But if you try to hide, and whatever mistake happens, going to show up later.
I agree completely. Can we talk about the transition from AC into cameraman, and how you have to, or sometimes you have to decline the jobs you would usually take before, and there's a period of struggle that comes along with that decision, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's, why lately my motto has been do what you love, and I wish I would maybe have adopted that a little sooner, but that's okay. It's I'm just gonna go with it now. And I think that a lot of why do we do things that we don't like doing, or one, it might be like I might make choices based out of fear. I might make choices from maybe I just don't know yet what I want to do, or sometimes I might just go with the path of least resistance. And so I think there were times where I probably should have said no to some jobs so that I could focus more on my career as a cameraman, and I did so because, well, I think that a lot of times I said yes to jobs out of fear, and mainly either financial insecurity or fear of saying no, or fear of really committing, fear of putting my faith in the universe that this will work out, and so nowadays I'm really, when I'm faced with choices or challenges, I try to pause and I try to look at my choices and say, okay, how can I make a choice that's not fear-based here? How can I make a choice that is authentic to me, that is genuine, and kind of in line with what I want to be doing, and really does fill my cup? And so it's not always easy to do that, because sometimes there's these the pressures of and this immediate this sense of urgency that is present, that you need to respond right away. And so I've been trying to practice like pausing and taking a few minutes to kind of reflect. And so sometimes you have the luxury of doing that, sometimes you don't, and sometimes you forget, and sometimes you know.
How have you prepared yourself to not forget, or to remind yourself to be aware and to take the pause? How have you prepared?
Well, I think watching for the cues, and some of the cues are physical, and some of the cues are emotional, but if I can be mindful at every phase, like I would be pausing before I take a sip of tea and be aware of the tea as I'm taking a sip.
Yeah.
But I don't always have the time to do that. So and so if I have a routine and a practice that kind of helps me remind myself, like, hey, what is it that I want to be doing today? What is it that I want to be working towards? And can I be present while I'm doing it? So,
what does that routine look like?
Well, on the days where I have lots of time, it might take a couple hours, but it'll start with prayer and meditation in the morning, reading excerpts from books that kind of remind me what I want to be working towards, and then maybe some yoga, spend some time with my little 2-year-old, and then leave the house, and hopefully a little more centered than if I were to get up and have a cup of coffee and then start worrying about my day.
Be scattered, yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, to leave your place, your dwelling space, grounded feels so good, and the day usually is great.
And sometimes I have the opportunity to really do that for a couple hours, and then sometimes I just have to, I have 5 to 10 minutes to do it. Mm-hmm. So I find that it's better to do it even for 5 to 10 minutes than not at all. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes if I do leave the house and I didn't do it, maybe I'll pause. Maybe I can find a moment a little bit later. And it's never quite as effective if I do it later than if I do it in the morning. It's just really more effective if I can do it first thing in the morning. And if now I've been kind of experimenting, like kind of if I can add another meditation later in the day. So
yeah, that's tough to add that extra umph of goodness later. You're like, well, I did a great morning. Like, yeah, maybe I should. I don't know. That's great. So what is that extra thing you might do at the end of the day? Like a traditional meditation or something? Yeah,
usually a sit-down Vipassana meditation, and where you focus on your breathing. But I do a few different forms of meditation, and so if I can, even just pause for 5-10 minutes in the afternoon, or again in the evening after I've wrapped my day. Kind of take a few minutes to reflect.
That's great. When you're filmmaking, that helps a lot. And I've done some meditation throughout my whole life, but not as consistent as I have this last 3 or 4 years. I've been kind of consistently doing some form of it. But I remember you and I were on set, and I was directing. You were director of photography, and I felt like I had a lot going on, and you're like, hey, you should do a meditation before we go on. And it really helped. So in filmmaking, I can completely agree. It's a good method to happen.
I had this fantasy of like working on projects where we got all the crew to kind of meditate together at various points throughout the day. And and it's still possible to do that, and that was one of the times that we kind of, it was a little experiment in doing that, and so I would like to see how we could get that
Next shoot, for
yeah.
sure. We should do a little pre-discussion, and then we can see who wants to join. It's like, hey, if you guys want to join, be here this much earlier, and we do a little meditation. I love that idea.
And I'm curious to see what the results are in the end product versus doing it without.
Yeah.
And, because it just...
I guarantee that when the problems come up, which they always do on the shooting a film or anything with filmmaking, it doesn't go how you planned exactly.
Yeah.
So when something weird comes up, I feel like we can be kind of indifferent and just go with it easier. I would love to try that out.
Yeah,
sure.
Let's try that.
For sure. Can you lead us into what a director of photography does? Because that's currently pretty much what you've become the master at, is what I think.
So, director of photography captures the visual images that you see in your film, your commercial, your whatever, your documentary, and it can be he'll help the director in establishing a look and style to help communicate what it is that he wants to communicate. And sometimes the director will have a vision of what he really wants to see and communicate, and sometimes it might be a little vague. Maybe it's not quite totally shaped, and so you work together to shape that. Or if the director has a vision that's very specific, you work together in how to accomplish it technically. How do I achieve that, or how do I contribute to it in a way that is in the same feel, and so you're using tools and skills and a craft in a way to communicate in an artistic manner. So
well put.
Yeah.
What are your key principles, and can you take us kind of from the moment you get, if there's a script, the moment you get a script, like what you do, and then when you're going on set, what checkpoints or check marks you have during all that?
So I think for me, I've noticed that I try to empathize with who it is that I'm reading, or what the story's about. Can I relate to what is being communicated? How can I connect to the material in a way on a personal level? And then, if I can, then I can be a lot more authentic in how I'm going to communicate that visually. So, for me, I think when I was younger, I had a harder time communicating verbally, and so communicating visually was an easier way for me. And so I think that connecting what I'm feeling to my visual tools is what I don't know. I kind of feel like I drifted off the answer, but
no, it makes sense when communicating through the camera is a feeling and it's a creative outlook. It's interesting, and every shoot's different, and every photo's different.
I think if ideally, and I don't always get there, but ideally, the more authentic I can be, the more honest I can be, the better the results. And so if I connect to the material, then I can really be honest about it. And there's a little paradox there, because actually filmmaking is kind of, it's not really honest. It's like smoke and mirrors, and you're kind of so. How do you tell a story honestly
that isn't
really real? So
that's a great point. That's you could think about that for a long time. When you show up on set, how does it go?
Well, when you show up, on set in the morning, well, when you first show up, it's usually you have a lot of questions to answer, and you're trying to evaluate. Hopefully, you have a plan, and the more prepared you are, the better chances you are at completing at least half of what you wanted to get done. So, I think somebody I used to work for told me, like, if you can, at least accomplish 50 to 60% of what you plan to do, you're doing pretty good.
That's good advice.
And so that means, the more, if I'm only 50% prepared, I'm only going to get 25% done. So the more prepared I am, the more I do my homework before I show up to set, the better the chances at getting something good.
Can you walk us through the actual, I know every set's different, but first AC sets up, and what are you doing while he's setting up the camera, and you're talking with who?
First AC he'll kind of generally set up the camera, but he's going to want to know what kind of lens and where are we shooting and where am I putting the camera. And so really you're not really going to the camera so much right off the bat. You're going to the director and first AD to figure out, all right, what's our first shot? We may have planned a first shot here yesterday, but is it the same because talent's running late and our location isn't available or the light's not how we expected? There's so many variables that things change. So you gotta kind of be able to be flexible and find solutions on the fly to not be too stiff in your ability to respond. If you meet up with the first AD and director, find out where your first shot is. If everything's the same, great. Then you can go back to your team, your keys, your gaffer, your key grip, your first AC, and kind of bring them all to where you're doing the first shot. And I'm really a believer in blocking, so that all the keys show up on set. You block the scene. Everybody has a sense of, all right, here's what we're doing. This is where the camera's going to be. This is what we're going to see. And then you don't have to communicate the same thing over and over and over again to each person individually. So that's ideally how you'd be working, but that's not always the case. So, and once you've communicated where the first shot is, then line up the camera, start rehearsing, and see what changes. And if is there any camera movement that you need to add? Is there any lighting that needs to be tweaked? Is the director going to change the talent from where he said he was going to put him now to the opposite end of the room, and you weren't prepared for that? And so now, how do you change your entire lighting setup to have the actor in a different part of the room?
When you're working with the director, what questions do you ask to give you the best results, or how do you best work with the director? Because some directors are really hard to work with, or they're maybe not the best communicators, even though you think they would be. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, I think it's really if you're working with directors, I think comes down to relationships and how you understand each other. So you're having to understand what his vision is, and if he's having a difficult time communicating what his vision is, then maybe present some options and see what he likes. Mm-hmm. And then you start learning, okay, he likes this kind of style. Or the director does have a very specific vision, and he's able to communicate what he wants, and then that helps you do your job easier, because now you're kind of, if you understand his language of the words he uses to describe stuff, then you'll move a lot faster. And moving fast is good, because then you're not producers love that you move fast. Client loves that you move fast, and then there's times where you want to take time and really kind of figure out what the shot needs.
Even on a huge budget, there's still that time restraint, right?
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Yeah.
So planning,
so many people working, so much equipment, the location.
You could easily run that budget up. You can easily run the time up, and that's what some of the other players, like the producers and the assistant directors, they kind of keep that managed, while you and the director also manage it, but have that creative input. So you have a business called the DIT House. Can you tell us what it provides and explain what a DIT does? How to get into it?
When I was working as a first AC, I had an accident snowboarding and broke my leg in 5 places.
Oh my God, I remember this story.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I spent
one.
a good year, 18 months recovering from this broken leg. Could not work, disability, learned to live on $50 a week.
My gosh.
It was not easy. But I spent I was at home a lot, and I spent a lot of times on my computer. And I got very familiar with my computer. And when the shift from film to digital started to take place in the still photography world, because it's happened in the still photography world before the motion picture world. And my father was a still photographer, and it was happening in the early 2000s. That transition was happening very quickly, and his work was going very quickly each year, from like 80% film, 20% digital. Next year, 50% film, 50% digital. Then the next, like just over a period of 3 years, it really shifted very quickly. And I was recovering from, still wasn't able to work on a motion picture set, so I went and worked at my dad's studio in Paris, and I worked as what we call today a digitech, a technician who operates the digital camera and captures digital stills. And my father was a commercial photographer, and a lot of tabletop beauty products, and so we would shoot either film 4x5, 2 1/4, or medium format digital, which was like a little smaller than 2 1/4. And these files were not very big. I mean, it was like, I want to say like 16 megabytes or something was really big at that time. And that was 3 captures. So like you'd have an object on a table, and we would shoot like 1 capture for red, 1 capture for green, 1 capture for blue, and then it would blend those 3 images together to get a bigger file size. You could do single capture if you needed to, but the file size was smaller. So my point was just that I was injured. I learned digital and computers pretty well, and started to get involved in digital photography. And when the transition started to happen in motion picture world, it was very familiar to me. I saw the writing on the wall, and started to build systems that were kind of similar to digitech systems, and that would address the need of digital cinematography, of capturing the footage, downloading the footage, color correcting the footage, and then converting it to a new format, which is what editors will use, an offline file.
Very technical.
It was pretty technical, but I've learned a lot over the years by doing that, and the industry was kind of has evolved just in the past 5 years. So,
yeah, and you started that kind of out of your garage.
I did, yeah.
Right?
It was just a few Apple computers in my garage. Worked on some movies, Book of Eli, and when the Red camera was introduced in 2007. That really accelerated the whole transition from film to digital, and it opened up opportunities because there was a price point. It was like $15,000, $17,000. All of a sudden, you could buy a 4K camera that shot RAW, and that was like 1/10 the price of what other digital cameras cost or what a film camera cost. And so it really opened up new doors and new opportunities and accelerated the shift to digital. So and so then in digital, we started to shoot in what's called file-based workflows, where it's a file on a hard drive and you can transfer it from media to media. And before that, the digital was being recorded to tape.
You found, and you came in at the right time when there was something the film industry didn't have but was needing. So it's really interesting. And that's when you and I met, right? Maybe, I don't know if it was a year after or close to a year after you started it. You already had your warehouse, but 2012 was it when you were really established? When did you?
I started the company. Well, I started that work in 2008. So it had grown and grown at my house, and it kind of outgrew my garage. And then I had to buy or rent a space to run the business out of. And my business partner Felix was also involved at the time, and so we kind of built systems together, and then we would kind of either work as technicians on set or find and teach technicians, because there weren't a lot of DITs that knew had that skill set just yet. So we trained and taught a lot of people on how to do this position.
Isn't that fascinating that breaking your legs in 5,000 places created this new avenue for you?
And yeah, and I think, it's hard to, I definitely didn't see that at the time. And, it's not like I knew that something good would come out of that, but I'm trying to carry that over into all my affairs, really, and that, trust that if something bad happens, there can be something good that comes out of it. And it really is just a matter of my attitude and my perception, and what am I willing to do at that time to
get through it all and just see it at a different angle or perspective.
And not so easy to do sometimes when you're in pain or just suffering.
Did you feel during that time? I mean, you just said that for a year and a half or 18 months. So
a
you
year
were just
of
incapacitated, kind of.
Yeah, I was unable to walk for a year.
Wow. So did you feel like giving up with the film industry at some points, or at other parts of life? And what did you do? How did you?
I got really depressed, and I wanted to get back to work, but I just couldn't yet. And so I started looking at different choices. And so when I knew I was strong enough to work from a chair, I asked my dad, "Hey, can I come work for you?" And he said, "Yeah, come on out."
Interesting. You also have a rental business called VitaFilm, which rents camera and genie gear and several cool things. But I wanted to talk about your third most recent collaboration company you started, called Mindfulness Studios. Can you rap a little bit about that and the purpose?
I started a company called Mindfulness Studios that is a production company that will work in the field of telling stories that are kind of authentic and genuine, and kind of help raise awareness in different areas, and I call it a socially responsible production company. So we're trying to be honest, be genuine, and be treat people kindly, and and tell stories that kind of carry that message as well. And so right now we've done some small documentaries. We've done like profile piece for Red Bull, and I have a few other stories that are in the works that are going to be coming out soon. So
that sounds great. I'm a part of that also. I have helped you on 2, maybe 3 projects, and I love working on those.
Yeah, really, and that was really I enjoyed working together on those. Those were really good.
We should discuss this year on some of the next comings.
Okay,
I'd love to collaborate again.
Yeah, that was and that those projects really help kind of fill my cup, so to speak. Like really have been finding it satisfying to do these projects.
Fantastic. So, what type of person is a good fit for the film industry, and who isn't?
Good question. Well, I think the first thing that came to mind was flexible. And if I have a really rigid idea of like what I want and how I'm going to get there, it probably isn't going to really work that well. I'm probably going to find a lot of resistance, and I think past couple of years I've been trying to practice just saying yes a lot, and saying yes, but not just saying yes and not meaning it, but like actually saying yes to things that and actually showing up and doing it. Maybe even if something is presented to you that might not necessarily be in what your expectation or what your wheelhouse is, as long as you're like honest about it, do it anyways. Do it and gain experience and just be of service.
It makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that's a great practice. I practice being flexible with like my legs and my arms, but also what you're talking about. And it's so true. So me loving cameras and doing some camera work on my own and directing, that has been hard also, because I started out doing a lot just me, and then I collaborated with a friend, and often it was just me and my one friend or me. So I would work with me. So I didn't need to be that flexible. And then as I started to grow and work with other people, I realized, damn, like they're in it to help me get what I'm looking for. So if you're not flexible, how can you get what you want? It's very cool. You've kind of discussed this about morning routines. What's that?
Just stretching.
He's doing a pose. I like a stretch pose. You've discussed it a little bit in your morning routines, but can you go into anything else that comes to mind? When this industry gets crazy, how do you zoom out and get a grip on yourself? Zoom out, grip. It's a pun intended.
Yeah.
Like that?
Yeah, there's can be times that are extremely stressful. Expectations are high. Maybe there's something that mistake was made. I don't know, but I think remembering that what we're doing is not that serious. This is not life and death. This is not. I believe that we're doing the best we can, and if we could do better, we would. And if somebody has the attitude that that's not good enough, that's okay.
How do you handle that when someone's getting crazy at you and you know that? Yeah. What do you?
Yeah, I feel like I don't necessarily need to match them at their intensity or at their insanity, and because if they come at me with a lot of intense crazy anger, I don't need to meet them there. It's not going to help the situation, and if I do, and I have done it, it never helps, and end up saying stuff you regret later, or and I think both parties will remember that you stayed cool under pressure. And how do you stay cool under pressure? Because the pressure can be really high. So, for me, that might mean kind of walking away for a few minutes and kind of taking a minute to reflect, or to breathe, or to relax, and then coming back to a situation. Even just a couple minutes, that'll help a lot. Like deep breathing, and so that's
breaths.
Yeah,
it's kind of back to taking the pause and reminding yourself to take the pause.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. Good stuff. What is your biggest mistake, either as a novice or even as a professional? If one come to mind that you're like once I was an AC, and I forgot the batteries that where we're at my house, and I mean it wasn't too far, but it was just we were ready to shoot, and then I put in the camera batteries, and then I didn't have them. It was a small job, luckily, but I got some shit from the crazy guy that hired me.
One thing that really irks me is waking up late.
It's the worst.
It is.
Your heart pounds.
Yes, yeah, and that's really stressful too, especially in LA. Traffic can be really bad, and if you're late, you can be really late.
And you're notorious for being late, because he was a DP on a Toyota commercial, and I was the second AC.
Uh-huh.
And me and the first AC were like, where the hell's Sacha? We're literally ready to roll, and you just came in with your little quiet electric car, and then you got out, but you were in such a good mood. It was, and you were okay with it.
Yeah,
I remember that. It was fun.
No, I've had a couple times where I woke up late, and I just, the pit of your stomach drops, and you're like, oh my God, no, what happened? Alarm didn't go off, or maybe you hit the snooze and you didn't even realize it.
Yeah, phone alarm plus an additional alarm is key.
Yeah, and so one time I remember waking up late, and the location was over an hour away, and there was massive traffic. So it just, there was no way I was going to be on time, and so I really work hard at being on time. And something that Steve told me was that, and it kind of shifted my attitude towards being on time and late. So I feel like I did used to be constantly late, and but was that subconsciously being late is an effort to try and take back control, and to be in control of the situation.
That's a very interesting fact.
And I think that kind of resonated with me. I was like, oh, am I kind of subconsciously trying to take control of this situation because I don't like what I'm doing, or maybe I'm not happy working on this,
or some other part of your life that is not working. You can at least control that, and maybe That's interesting. There
was a part of that kind of resonated with me, and it kind of helped me kind of shift my attitude towards being on time. And so now I do consider myself a person who shows up on time.
That's great. That's something I've definitely been working on for a lot of my life. So when we show up, usually for jobs, it's in the film industry, your call time's at 6 or sometimes or 5 or 7 a.m. But then you have sometimes 2 months off, or you don't get a job, and then you're just gonna get lazy and wake up whenever you want. It's like a freelance life is weird. When you're working, you really intense and strict, and then you have this downtime.
Yeah, it is. Freelance is difficult because you have these highs and lows, and when you're working, I think one piece of advice is don't place your self-esteem on whether you're working or not, and it's easy to feel on top of things when you're working, and then when the job ends, your self-esteem goes down. And so if I think if I'm not attaching my self-worth to whether I'm working or not, then that's a lot healthier. And it's another interesting thing is like when you work on longer projects like feature films, you really develop this bond with the crew, and you're kind of like this family. And at the end when you wrap, there's kind of like a little sadness, a little party that's kind of, oh, where's my family going, you know? And so just some interesting aspects of working in the motion picture industry.
Yeah. Family of filmmakers. Is there one item, how about one tool that every cameraman has to have?
Well, it used to be called a sun path, but having a tool that tells you where the sun comes and where it's going and where it's going to end, where the sun rises, where it sets, and where it goes through the day. Now with like iPhones, that you have amazing apps that allow you to track the sun across the sky and tell you where it's going to be at 5 a.m., at 2 p.m., and then at 6 p.m. And
that's important as a
that's
cameraman
really,
or any filmmaker. What app do you use?
I have, well, let me check.
Yeah.
I think it's called, the app I use is called Sun Surveyor. And it helps me track the sun.
Okay. Death is amongst us. You've passed. What's on your epitaph? What's written on your grave?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. Today, let's just put do what you love.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, now I know what buys me time. A question that buys me time. Okay. So I wanted to give you a chance to let listeners know where to find you, your websites, your rental companies, where they can reach out.
So the DIT House is at thedithouse.com. You can find my work at sachariviere.com or at mindfulnessstudios.com.
Great. Any handles or Instagram that you want to let people know about to follow you? Or
At Vitafilm.
Okay, on Instagram?
On Instagram, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Great. I have a final question for you.
Sure.
What's one step that people can take now that will help them begin to thrive in the entertainment industry? Like today.
Take chances. Be willing to take chances, even just small ones, you know, and be willing to ask for help. So I think we can all, apply that a little bit more. You know, am I willing to ask for help with something? So
that's a good one.
Yeah,
I know. I've been that problem. I've had that problem since I was growing up. I didn't want to ask for help because I felt like I could do everything myself, and that will make me good. And I did a lot of things myself, but then I started realizing how much better it could be, or how much bigger it could be with the help of others.
And it helps them too. So
yeah,
they're helping you, and it's a win-win.
I love it. Thank you, Sacha, so much. I'm going to shake your hand
thanks.
right now.
Thanks for coming out.
Yeah, I appreciate your time. And we'll talk soon.
All right.
Well then, there now. I hope you enjoyed this episode and took away some actionable advice that will help you thrive in this tough but rewarding business. I had so much fun with Sacha, and as always, when we talk, I learned a bunch of new perspectives on life and filmmaking. So I hope you did too. And if this episode has some gold in it for you, please take a few moments to leave a review for the show, as well as subscribe to the show, and please pick whatever platform you're comfortable with, because I'm excited to say now this podcast is on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, TuneIn, and YouTube. So please take a listen to some more episodes to come, You can also follow me on Instagram or Twitter at Let's Unfake It for industry-related photos like cute puppies next to coconuts and much, much more. I would literally love to hear from you, and it might make me feel like I'm desperately in love with a schoolboy. Oops. Also, please, if you have any recommendations on who you would like to hear interviewed, please message me or leave a comment, and I will do my best to get them on the show. That is all for this episode, and I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you for listening to the Unfake It Till You Make It podcast. For detailed sources and show notes for this episode, visit www.unfakeittillyoumakeit.com. Until next time, get up, get going, and get creative.